I mean, we got a dystopian, and I will say, pleasantly surprised by the effectiveness of The Hunger Games and Suzanne Collins' writing. I did not expect to like this book as much as I like it. I'm still thinking about the other book. We'll get there. Listen, 5 out of 5. Mostly because I went into this with lower expectations, and I came out of it going, wow, that was really good writing. And you know, considering because it's a YA novel, my perception of this is that it was a YA novel for young women, girls, right? And I remember so many people talking about this back, 15 years ago, you know, but it sort of died out. Like, I didn't really hear this come up a lot more in the last, let's say, decade, or even 5 or 6 years, you know? I just feel like people have moved on from this conversation. But after I finished reading this, I started, and the other ones, I'll get to it. But I looked into it, and it's like, no, this is still on top lists. Like, people still talk about this very, very highly. And there was a moment in this particular book, I recall it being somewhere in late Act 2, so the second half of the book's like somewhere in the third quarter. And I don't want to spoil anything because, you know, I like a 5 for me is like, it's a high recommend. Like, I recommend people, like, if you don't think you'll like this book, read it anyways, because like that's kind of where I sat, and I do not regret reading this book at all. There's a scene in here that it definitely choked me up. Yeah, it's in the middle of the Hunger Games. Again, I'm not going to spoil it, but there's a character called Rue. If people have read this book, you know what I'm talking about. And there's a moment with Rue that I was like, yeah, wow, that was well done. Then Katniss starts singing, and well, I'm a pretty stone cold individual, and books generally don't get me what's the word there? Anyways, but that scene got me. I'm gonna move on, and then I was like, okay. About 2 weeks have passed. I ended up reading Catching Fire because I was like, okay, let's see where this goes, because I don't know how Suzanne Collins could kind of create another Hunger Games scenario where we have Katniss as the protagonist drawing us through the story, right? Because it's this like first person present tense writing. It's like you're in there with Katniss and her experiences through the entire thing, and I thought that was like a really immersive way of writing. I don't think I've ever read a book that was in that tense and written with this much dedication, I guess, focus to the character and her emotions and thoughts going through this. But did this get a 5? No. This got a 4 out of 5. 4 out of 5 is still good, right? Still kind of recommended. What did I not like about this? It's not that I didn't like it. A 4 is still like, I like most all of it. I will say that I remember somewhere around page 80 or something like that, there was another moment. I guess it's the catalyst moment that goes from Act 1 to Act 2. Got a little bit overclamped again. She goes to District 11, where is Rue's district, and there's a moment there that I think I have a faint memory. It's 15 years ago, but I remember the trailer maybe doing like this thing, you know, in that moment. So for all of you who know, now you know the scene I'm talking about, where it's like, I mean, things are like, they're really hard, like something lands really deep, like for me, and I was like, oh wow, that was good, that was really good, and then it goes wrong real fast, like things go south real quick, and then it throws us into an Act 2, and then we get the premise of like, oh, that's how they're gonna do another Hunger Games-esque, and by esque I mean Hunger Games. I don't want to spoil things, right? But not here. I mean, if I do a book review, I'm always going to spoil the hell out of those because I want to talk about everything in the book, right? But I'm going to be a little bit careful with these ones. These are just updates, you know? But for those of you who have read the book, you know what I'm talking about. But anyways, all of Act 2. So Act 2 for me is, of course, I split Act 2 into 2 parts. It's usually like my reading experiences are split into 4, and then I kind of read them, kind of tap it into what I expect to see in the first quarter, the second quarter, third quarter, fourth quarter. So Act 2 is the second part and third part. And for me, there was a lot of kind of like buildup of ideas, but I didn't feel like they were moving as fast as the first book. And then by the time we get to the Hunger Games, why don't I put this in quotes? They were literally Hunger Games. The Hunger Games part of this, without spoiling, is like when that all happens in the third act, so the last quarter of the book, I feel like things are too fast, and I wasn't really hooking into the other characters that were involved in getting us through the last quarter of this book. And so it sort of lost some steam for me, and so 4 out of 5. I still think it's a recommend, of course, enjoy it. I immediately, that was read in basically a day. This was read in half a day. So then I woke up the next morning and I jumped into Mockingjay right away because I was like, how do you do a third book? At this point, I don't understand. How do you make the Hunger Games of this one? That one is kind of in quotes. I don't want to spoil it. But again, this is a scenario where it's like, imagine every escalation possible. She becomes this like girl on fire. She becomes kind of an icon for revolution or rebellion against the Capitol. And that's pretty much the high level premise, right? And then this is effectively the, like, where do you take that and how do you then resolve all of it. This is a 3 out of 5 for me. This started to fall off pretty fast for me. I wasn't really hooking into a lot of the motivations, and here's the thing. I understand how the characters' psychology, the psyche breakdown of the characters, they really start breaking down here. And we got to imagine this, like, as children going through these Hunger Games, they got to kill people, they see people die, they got to, you know what I mean? And so that's going to have an effect on them. And so from that perspective, it's actually really well done. Because, I mean, you're in the mind of Katniss, and she is unraveling, okay? Even though she has she keeps a presence up, and she becomes this icon reluctantly for this movement. But then it gets to the capital part, and I would say in the last quarter of this book, it really falls apart for me. I really don't enjoy how this book ends, and therefore how the trilogy ends. And it's not because I was like vying for one character over another, things to go a way that I would have preferred. No, it's exactly like this didn't go the way I preferred, and this becomes a very strong subjective bias not because of what the story did, but what the storytelling did. And I want to caveat this because, like, when I read stuff and I absorb stories, I have a sort of cadence that I expect out of the storytelling. And I got to the last quarter of this book, even the end of the act 2 of this book, where they're in a troop and they're kind of breaking into the Capitol, but then people just start falling off, right? They just like, and the way that they fall off, I'm just like, wait, what just happened? Like, I'm like, I have to read things a couple times. I'm like, no. Like, I don't understand. Like, what do you mean? Like, and so is it realistic? I mean, yeah, but it's not good for storytelling. And that's kind of where I sat on this one. And then by the time it's like the whole event happens, and then I'm not spoiling the end, but there's a moment in the end where when it happens, it's like in a paragraph. And I was like, well, you just spent 3 novels talking about like building this, like this thing of this relationship thing, connection thing. And you're going to, in one paragraph, I don't want to spoil it, but if you know, you know. And it's just one of those, like, that has to be a dream. Like, I was like, this is a nightmare. She's going to snap out of it. There's some drugs going through her system or some crap. Like, this will all make sense. No, it didn't for me. I mean, it did, but because it didn't. From a storytelling perspective, 3 out of 5. I feel like the series for me would have been more effective if 3/4 into the book, the second half of Act 2, right? If they spent more time on that, so that the troop itself had the same sort of time spent on them. It was like we actually bonded with some of them, and the secondary characters and side characters even, that they had some more substance to them, so that when you took characters away from us, that there was more of an impact. And I felt zero impact with anything that ended up happening in the last quarter of the book after, because I was like, it's not, anyways, the storytelling broke down for me. That's all I have to say.